Iran recently embarrassed the United States before the entire globe, and what occurred today in Muscat, Oman, will be recalled as the instance American diplomatic strength expired. Here's what truly transpired during Friday's nuclear discussions that the media won't reveal to you. The American delegation reached Muscat, headed by Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, Trump's personal son-in-law. They brought Admiral Brad Cooper, the CENTCOM commander who oversees all U.S. military forces in the Middle East. This is America's chief general in the territory, a four-star admiral commanding aircraft carriers, fighter jets, and 40,000 troops across 19 installations. Iran examined the American delegation and declared, "Remove the general from here. We won't occupy the same table with military representatives." The Iranians declined to negotiate while CENTCOM's commander was available. They informed Oman, the mediator, that any attendance of CENTCOM or any territorial military representatives in the discussions can endanger the procedure. Translation: eliminate your general or there are no discussions. America yielded. Admiral Cooper was removed from direct negotiations. The discussions advanced without him, and instead of face-to-face conversations, Iran requested and received indirect shuttle diplomacy through Omani mediators. Let that register. The United States of America, the globe's sole military superpower, got instructed by Iran to eliminate its chief general from negotiations, and America accepted. This is unprecedented. When was the previous time any nation successfully requested that America remove military leadership from diplomatic discussions? Never. Not Russia, not China, not North Korea. Nobody instructs America who can participate in negotiations, except Iran recently did, and America acknowledged it. But the embarrassment grows worse. The discussions weren't even direct. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbasaraghi declined to occupy across from Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Instead, Oman's Foreign Minister, Badr al-Busaidi, shuttled between separate chambers, carrying written requests back and forth like a server, collecting orders. America would document its requests. Oman would transport the paper to Iran's delegation in a separate chamber. Iran would document their answer. Oman would transport it back to the Americans, then continue. For 8 hours, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. local time, the most dominant country on earth couldn't even accomplish face-to-face discussions with Iran. They occupied separate chambers, exchanging notes through Omani intermediaries. And here's what those notes contained. America's requests. Iran must consent to zero uranium enrichment on Iranian soil. Iran must drastically restrict or abolish its ballistic missile program. Iran must cease supporting Hezbollah, Hamas, and Houthi forces. Iran must stop threatening Israel. Iran must enhance treatment of protesters. Iran's answer, no. Specifically, Iran stated, according to Reuters sources informed on the discussions, missiles are completely non-negotiable. We will never examine our defensive capabilities or missiles in any negotiation. Never. Not possibly. Not under particular conditions. Never. On nuclear enrichment, Iran dismissed American requests for zero enrichment, but stated they'd examine the level and quality of enrichment, or potentially a territorial consortium to oversee Iranian uranium. That's not a compromise. That's Iran stating, we'll maintain enriching uranium, but we can discuss the specifics. Foreign Minister Arakchi characterized the discussions publicly as concentrated exclusively on nuclear matters. Not missiles, not territorial proxies, not human rights, merely nuclear. And even there, Iran is presenting minimal adaptability. Axios documented that some segments of Friday's 8-hour marathon did contain brief direct exchanges between Witkoff and Arakchi, but the arrangement remained primarily shuttle diplomacy with Oman mediating. This constitutes a complete reversal of normal diplomatic procedure. Usually, Iran is the isolated outcast state, desperate for sanctions relief, requesting meetings with American representatives. Now Iran is establishing terms. Location Muscat instead of Istanbul. Arrangement indirect instead of direct. Participants: no military representatives, and agenda nuclear exclusively, missiles prohibited. And America is acknowledging Iranian conditions because the alternative is departing and clarifying to nervous Arab allies why diplomacy collapsed. 9 Middle Eastern nations, including Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey, pressured the White House at the highest positions to maintain these discussions alive. They're frightened of territorial war, so Trump consented to Iran's requests for the discussions just to prevent being accused for diplomatic breakdown. But acknowledging Iran's terms has a price. It indicates American weakness. It demonstrates that Iran, not America, manages the diplomatic procedure. Now, let's discuss why Iran felt confident enough to embarrass America this way and what it discloses about the genuine power dynamic between Washington and Tehran. First, the military situation. While diplomats shuttled between chambers in Muscat, CENTCOM released new footage of the USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier functioning in the Arabian Sea. The propaganda communication was clear. We possess overwhelming military strength in your territory, except Iran recognizes something CENTCOM isn't promoting. That carrier is exposed. Iranian anti-ship ballistic missiles can strike it. Drone swarms can overwhelm its protections. And if combat starts, thousands of American sailors might perish before the Lincoln escapes Iranian weapons distance. That's why Iran can afford to remove Admiral Cooper from discussions. They're not intimidated by American military strength anymore. They've examined how to sink carriers. They've positioned missiles specifically engineered to overcome Aegis defense arrangements. They recognize the economics benefit them, affordable drones versus expensive interceptors. So when Cooper appeared in Muscat, Iran perceived it as an intimidation strategy and challenged America's bluff. Your general doesn't frighten us. Eliminate him or no discussions. And America eliminated him. Second, the diplomatic situation. This meeting nearly didn't occur at all. Earlier in the week, America dismissed Iran's appeal to relocate discussions from Istanbul to Oman and to transform from multilateral with observers from other nations to bilateral arrangement. A senior U.S. representative informed Axios on Wednesday, "We instructed them it is this or nothing, and they stated okay, then nothing." The representative added that if Iran declined the American arrangement, people will examine other alternatives, meaning military operations. Iran challenged that bluff too. They stated fine, no discussions. And suddenly 9 Arab nations started panicking and pressuring Trump to reconsider. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Egypt, Turkey, Oman, Jordan, Bahrain, and Kuwait all informed the White House, "Please don't terminate the meeting. Please maintain diplomacy alive. Please don't activate territorial war." Arab leaders are frightened of what transpires if America attacks Iran. They recognize Iran will respond against U.S. installations throughout the territory. They recognize oil prices will surge. They recognize their economies, dependent on tourism, investment, and stable energy markets, will collapse. So, they requested Trump to acknowledge Iran's terms, and Trump yielded. Within 24 hours, the White House reversed position and consented to Iran's requests. Muscat, not Istanbul, bilateral, not multilateral, nuclear-only agenda. That's the second occasion in 1 week that Iran established terms, and America acknowledged them. Third, the substantive situation. Iran entered these discussions from a stance that appears weak on paper, but is actually quite strong strategically. Yes, Israeli and American operations in June destroyed 35 to 45% of Iran's nuclear enrichment capability. Yes, protests in January killed up to 20,000 Iranians and constituted the regime's worst internal crisis in decades. Yes, Iran's economy is devastated by sanctions, and its currency is at all-time lows. But Iran still possesses 2,000 ballistic missiles ready to launch. They're manufacturing 300 fresh missiles per month. Their nuclear knowledge hasn't been destroyed, only equipment, and they've restored their medium-range missile capabilities to pre-war levels in just 7 months. Most importantly, Iran recognizes time is on their side. Every month without war, they construct more missiles. Every month, American interceptor stockpiles remain exhausted from June's combat. Every month, Trump encounters more domestic political pressure as economic conditions deteriorate. So, Iran can afford to be inflexible. They don't require a deal. America requires a deal to demonstrate Trump accomplished something through negotiations to prevent military action that could sink carriers and kill thousands, to avoid oil price surges that would activate a recession. That asymmetry clarifies today's embarrassment. The desperate party makes compromises, and right now, despite all appearances, America is the desperate party. Trump requires to prevent war before November midterm elections. He requires to avoid oil shocks that crater the economy. He requires to demonstrate his art of the deal abilities work on the global stage. Iran merely requires to survive until Trump loses patience or transforms priorities. And while they wait, they maintain constructing missiles and enriching uranium. Fourth, the Israeli situation. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu met with Steve Witkoff on Tuesday before the Muscat discussions. Israeli intelligence briefed the American delegation on Iran's capabilities and cautioned that Iran cannot be trusted, but Netanyahu's genuine message was simpler. Any deal that doesn't limit Iranian missiles is unacceptable to Israel, and if America authorizes such a deal, Israel will attack Iranian missile installations unilaterally, dragging America into war anyway. That positions Trump in an impossible situation. He requires Iran to negotiate on missiles to satisfy Israel, but Iran absolutely declines to examine missiles. So Trump can either authorize a nuclear-only deal and observe Israel activate war, or depart from discussions entirely and accept blame for diplomatic collapse. Iran recognizes Trump is trapped. That's why they can embarrass him by removing his general, compelling indirect discussions, and establishing the agenda. So, here's what today's embarrassment actually signifies for Trump's Iran approach, and why it indicates that war is more probable, not less, despite discussions continuing. First, the domestic political expense. Trump's entire brand is strength. America first, peace through strength. We don't lose anymore. He's the individual who supposedly makes deals from positions of dominance. Today, Iran compelled Trump to acknowledge the preferred venue over his, or acknowledge indirect discussions over direct negotiations. Remove America's chief territorial military commander, restrict discussions to nuclear matters exclusively, obtain a flat no on missiles. That's not strength. That's America accepting terms established by a nation with an economy smaller than Florida's. Republican hawks will be furious. Senators like Tom Cotton and Lindsey Graham will request to know why Trump let Iran embarrass American negotiators. Conservative media will question whether Trump is going soft, and Trump, who cannot tolerate perceptions of weakness, will experience political pressure to execute something dramatic to restore his tough guy image, like ordering military operations. Second, the Israeli pressure. Netanyahu is already publicly skeptical of negotiations. Today's discussions generated no breakthrough on missiles, Israel's primary concern. So Netanyahu will inform Trump, "I cautioned you, diplomacy wouldn't work. Iran proved me right. Now we require military action." And Trump will encounter a choice: dismiss Israeli requests and observe Netanyahu attack Iranian targets anyway, activating territorial war without American control over timing or escalation, or authorize joint operations and own the consequences politically. Neither alternative is good, but the first alternative is worse because it makes Trump appear weak and reactive. So political calculation may push him toward alternative 2, even if military advisors caution against it. Third, the practical diplomatic reality. Today's discussions are scheduled to persist. Another round is anticipated in the coming days, according to Omani mediators. Both sides characterize conversations as serious and positive in public declarations, but nothing transformed. America wants missiles on the table. Iran states never. America wants zero enrichment. Iran presents to examine levels and quality, which signifies continuing enrichment at lower levels, not stopping entirely. Those stances are incompatible. More talking won't bridge the distance. It will just reveal how far apart they remain. An exposure of diplomatic collapse makes military action more probable because it provides Trump political cover. We attempted negotiations. Iran declined reasonable requests. Force became necessary. Fourth, the territorial consequences. Arab allies pressured hard to maintain these discussions alive because they're frightened of war. But today's result won't reassure them. If Iran successfully embarrassed America in negotiations, what transpires when combat starts? Will America's military dominance prove equally hollow? Will carriers sink? Will installations get destroyed? Will oil shipments cease? Arab states are now calculating scenarios where American military strength fails to deliver a quick victory. Iran responds effectively, and the entire territory descends into economic chaos and violence. That fear might push some Arab states toward accommodation with Iran, recognizing that America cannot protect them as reliably as they thought. Others might push harder for preemptive operations before Iran gets stronger. Either way, today's diplomatic embarrassment destabilizes the territory by revealing American weakness. Fifth, the economic markets. Global markets are already in chaos. Bitcoin crashed to $69,000. Gold is volatile. Silver plunged. Dollar is weak. Stock markets are shaky. Investors perceive today's result. Iran establishing terms to America and conclude that diplomatic solutions are improbable. That signifies war risk increases, and war risk signifies oil shocks, recession fears, and capital flight from risk assets. The market crash that's already occurring will accelerate if discussions collapse entirely. And Trump owns that economic damage politically. So here's the final evaluation. Today's discussions in Muscat didn't reduce war risk, they increased it. By acknowledging Iran's embarrassing terms just to maintain discussions alive, Trump demonstrated weakness that emboldens Iran and disappoints allies. By failing to make progress on missiles, he ensured Israeli pressure for military action will intensify. By revealing the diplomatic distance publicly, he created political cover for eventual operations. And by removing Admiral Cooper, CENTCOM's commander, from negotiations, Iran sent a communication: "We're not afraid of your military. Your threats don't work anymore." That communication is dangerous because it might convince Trump he requires to prove Iran wrong through military action, and it might convince Iran they can survive American operations and emerge victorious. Both sides are now functioning from miscalculations about the other's resolve and capabilities. That's the recipe for wars nobody wanted, but everyone stumbled into. The discussions will persist. More shuttle diplomacy, more indirect communications exchanged through Omani mediators, more public declarations about serious conversations and good beginnings, but nothing will transform. Iran won't negotiate on missiles. America won't acknowledge a nuclear-only deal, and Trump won't acknowledge being embarrassed indefinitely. So the discussions buy time, maybe days, maybe weeks, but they don't buy peace. They just postpone the instance when Trump decides he's had enough diplomatic embarrassment and orders operations to restore American credibility. And when those operations come, everyone will indicate to today as the instance we perceived it coming. The instance Iran proved America's threats were empty. The instance Trump's negotiators occupied separate chambers, exchanging notes like children while Iran's missiles prepared to launch. Today wasn't diplomacy, it was theater. and the audience observing from Beijing to Moscow to Jerusalem to Riyadh perceived exactly what Iran wanted them to perceive. America is weak. American threats are hollow. American strength is fading, and Iran can establish terms to the globe superpower without consequences. That's the legacy of Friday, February 6th, 2026, the day Iran embarrassed America in Muscat and the day territorial war became inevitable. I'm Dav from 3 Daily News.